Hello, my name is Josh and I am a beggar. As someone who has lived on the streets for many years, I have experienced various emotional and financial difficulties. But today, I'm not here to talk about that. Instead, I would like to share with you a horrifying and unforgettable story that I experienced. After years of living on the streets, I was used to going through all sorts of situations. From extreme cold to hunger, and dealing with aggressive people trying to kick me out of places where I tried to rest. Over time, I became resilient to the physical and emotional pain that was part of my life. One day, after being kicked out of the front of a fast food, a place where I used to beg for food, I decided to wander through the city streets. I stumbled upon a huge cemetery, a place I had never explored before. I had always been skeptical of hauntings and ghosts. My biggest fear on the streets was human nature. So, driven by curiosity, I made the decision to enter the cemetery. As I walked through the cemetery, night fell, but I was so absorbed in my thoughts that I hadn't noticed. When the sun finally set, I started looking for a place to spend the night. That's when I found an open mausoleum, which seemed like a treasure to me. I finally had protection from the cold, rain, and strong winds, and I was in a quiet and safe place since few people would have the courage to enter a cemetery at night, or at least that's what I thought. For months, that mausoleum became my home. There, I kept my few things, and during the day, I went into the city in search of food and drink to survive. I knew it wasn't an easy life, but I also knew I couldn't give up. After all, surviving on the streets had taught me a lot about the importance of perseverance. But one night, everything changed. I was sleeping in my makeshift bed when I woke up to a strange sound. It sounded like something was scratching at the mausoleum door. I quickly got up, thinking it might be an animal or someone playing a prank on me. After all, some people in the city knew I lived there in the cemetery. However, when I approached the door, I realized there was nothing outside. The sound had stopped and everything was quiet. I was confused and scared, not understanding what could have caused that noise. I tried to go back to sleep, but soon heard another sound, this time even more terrifying. It was a low, dragging groan, as if it were coming from something suffering. I got up again, my heart pounding in my chest, and started searching around the mausoleum, but nothing seemed out of place. It was then that I decided to open the door again, and came face to face with a scene that froze my blood. A spectral figure with empty eyes and a macabre smile was floating towards me, leaving a trail of black mist behind it. My feet felt glued to the ground, I couldn't move. I struggled to run away, but my clumsy movements caused me to trip over an old sheet and fall to the cold, damp ground. The ghostly figure was approaching slowly, its silent and floating footsteps echoing sinisterly through the air. I could feel the intense cold emanating from it, a shiver running down my spine. As I was getting up, the ghost grabbed me by the neck with a supernatural strength. I screamed for help, but what came out of my throat was a barely audible wheeze caused by the force the monster used to lift me by the neck. Then the ghost started dragging me out of the mausoleum, and I knew I was in trouble. I tried to fight, but my strength was fading. The ghost dragged me through the dark corridors of the cemetery, showing no sign of compassion. Finally, he threw me with brutal force against a nearby tree, causing my head to hit the trunk violently. Sharp pain took over me as a deafening buzzing invaded my ears, leaving my vision blurry and confused. For a few minutes, I was disoriented, trying to regain my bearings amidst the terrifying darkness that surrounded me. As I regained consciousness, I realized that the ghost was tying a rope around my neck. My mind went blank, completely consumed by fear and terror. I couldn't believe that after surviving on the streets, I would be killed by a supernatural being in an empty cemetery, with no one to help me. The rope was getting tighter around my neck, and I could feel my breathing becoming increasingly difficult. The ghost seemed to be enjoying my despair, laughing as he pulled the rope with a force that seemed supernatural, and I felt my neck getting tighter and tighter. My breathing became more and more difficult, and I struggled to try to free myself, but it was useless. I could feel my life slipping away from me as the ghost brought me to the brink of death. The shadows of the cemetery danced around me, and then I lost consciousness. Incredibly, I woke up in the city hospital with a chill down my spine and my heart racing. The cemetery security guard found me the next morning in a horrible scene, thrown next to a tree, with blood running from my head and a dark stain around my neck. He told me that when he saw me, he thought I had been the victim of a brutal attack by some vandal, but upon approaching he noticed that I was still alive, so he ran to the hospital. Even after repeatedly trying to explain what had happened that night, no one believed me. The doctors looked at me with suspicion, as if I were a lunatic, and the cemetery security guard avoided making eye contact. But I knew the truth. I had seen that ghost dragging me to death, felt the rope tightening around my neck, and my last breath escaping my lips. And now, even as I recover physically, the memory of that horrifying day haunts me every night. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the story. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.